Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. My name's GBay99, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys a full gameplay commentary on the new Summoner's Rift, which I am super excited about, and I cannot wait to get into talking about. I don't normally do full gameplay commentaries like this just because it's not really my style, if you ask me. I feel much more comfortable making videos that are in a much more controlled environment, something where I have a concise idea of what I'm going to talk about, and an environment where I can do multiple takes if I stutter or if I mess up or if something goes wrong. So I'm not typically too used to this, so I apologize if I mess up a little bit here or there, but I hope you guys are able to enjoy this anyway. This is a live full gameplay commentary of a ranked game that I'm playing. This is ranked. The new Summoner's Rift is out on ranked. Right now, currently, I am Platinum 5. I haven't gone back up to Platinum 1 ever since I fell down to Plat 5 for my 24-hour stream, but I'm still going to have loads of fun nonetheless, hopefully, and hopefully you guys are going to enjoy it as well. But what I'm really excited to talk about more than anything is just this new Summoner's Rift. I'm playing Aurelia, so I can sort of go on autopilot and just talk about the new Summoner's Rift and all the changes that we've seen in this preseason already, even though we've just gotten into the preseason. And it's, you know, this is just the beginning of all the different changes and tweaks that we're going to be seeing before the start of the new season. As I come over here and leash for Nautilus like a good top laner. Now, I apologize also if I take a few pauses to take a sip of water or anything, or maybe I'll focus on the game a little bit here or there, but more than anything, let's just go ahead and jump right in, talk about the new Summoner's Rift and everything, which I am just so excited for. First and foremost, we all know the new look, which just looks absolutely fantastic if you ask me. But more than anything, I'm actually really excited about the new performance enhancement that it seemed to give a lot of computers. If you guys take a look at the top right-hand corner of my screen, you can see that I am currently playing in 150 FPS, between 150 and 120 FPS, depending on how many champions and minions there are on the screen and everything. You guys are watching this in 30 frames per second because YouTube caps out its videos at 30 frames per second, but I'm able to play and stream in a constant 100 plus frames per second, which I was not able to do on the old Summoner's Rift. When I was streaming or making videos on the old Summoner's Rift, I was lucky to hold 60 frames per second. You know, typically it would drop down to maybe 30 in team fights or so, or if there was a lot going on the screen, but I'm just so ecstatic that suddenly, without replacing my terrible graphics card or anything, I'm able to do so much more with my crappy computer on such a good-looking map too. There have been a few complaints, and I've actually complained a little bit about the color differentiation. You know, the old Summoner's Rift was so distinctive, and it's a very, very big difference jumping to this new one that has much more muted colors and it's not as saturated. It is a little bit sad. You know, I've played on the old Summoner's Rift for the past 4 years of my life. I've been playing League now, which is quite a long time. You know, it's 4 years that I've devoted to that one map and to this game, so it's a little bit sad to see the old Summoner's Rift go. But at the same time, this new Summoner's Rift is very, very awesome and looks very polished. Also, the minions. That's another thing that I'm really excited for. Do you guys remember, I think it was my second or first Did You Know League of Legends episode? In either my second or first Did You Know League of Legends episode, I mentioned how Riot actually changed the way the minions looked before the release of the game. Uh-oh, Xin Zhao's coming up top lane to gank. And I should get out of this safe. Maybe I should have ignited Vladimir there. I possibly could have gotten a kill. Right now I can't use my crystalline flask. There we go. Okay, I want to focus a little bit on this game because I don't want this full gameplay commentary to just be me feeding 24/7 or something like that. But just getting back to what I was talking about before Xin Zhao so rudely interrupted and ganked. Ooh, we might be able to kill him here with the help of Nautilus. Damn it, I don't have enough mana for a Q. If he can land something, I'll ignite him. Good job, Nautilus. Getting the double kill for you and 2 assists for me. Pretty nice start to the game. But anyway, getting back to what we were talking about, the new minions actually look a lot, well, not a lot, but if you guys remember the second or first Did You Know episode I did of League of Legends, I sort of commented on how there were actually different minions that Riot changed up, that I think they were changed up only a month or two before the game came out. Maybe it was much longer than that, but you know, my memory's a little bit hazy. But the minions were actually a lot different and had a much different style than the old minions that Riot had for quite a long time afterwards. But these new minions look very, very nice, and they actually look a little bit like the older minions if they were much more colorful. But just everything about the new Summoner's Rift is looking very, very fantastic. And like I said, the performance is just... I mean, look at this gigantic, awesome, perfect view that we get. It's just beautiful, and I'm just awestruck, to be honest with you guys. I really do love what they've done with the new Summoner's Rift, and I'm very, very excited to play on it for, you know, however long it is until they eventually change it up again, if they ever do. But anyway, let's go ahead and stop talking about how good it looks and start talking about some of the gameplay. There have been a bunch of different changes that Riot has made gameplay-wise, tweaking all sorts of different things. You know, the jungle being the jungle, of course, being the largest one, but excuse me. There have been a bunch of different gameplay changes that Riot has made in addition to the new aesthetic changes with the new Summoner's Rift. The first and foremost is the jungle that has been changed up, and I'm not going to comment too much on that because I am not a jungler. You know, I'm not a rapper. I don't really I don't have too much authority on what I should sort of say about, you know, whether I think the new jungle changes are good or bad. Overall, from what I've seen, they look very, very interesting to say the least, and they are very, very good. You should be careful, Nautilus. Vladimir's probably coming down that way. Yeah, there he is, right there. And with Ziggs there, Nautilus is probably dead, so I'll back off here. But as I was saying, the new jungle changes, I'm not a jungler, so I can't really comment on those and say whether I think they're good or bad balance-wise, or whether they're smart, or, you know, I'm not super experienced in the jungle. You guys can go watch one of Stonewall's videos, or watch Nightblue's stream if you want to learn some more about that. But they do, the new jungle does look very interesting, and it does seem to bring up a lot of creative play. I've talked a lot about how I like creative play and play that allows players to have different unique strategies that they, you know, that they want to craft, and the fact that different camps will give you different buffs depending on which ones you smite, that is definitely very creative, and it's going to be very exciting to see how all the different junglers are going to sort of react to that. One of the strategies that people have already sort of come up with is if you're on blue side, if you smite the, I don't know what they're called, but the rock crab things, if you smite those, they'll give you a buff where I think it's every 2 or 3 auto attacks, or maybe every 2 or 3 seconds. One of your auto attacks is going to stun the any minions that you attack. I think it's any jungle creeps, but either any minions or any jungle creeps that you attack. So if you smite these rock crabs, then you can move over to the scuttlebug and just very easily kill the scuttlebug. And that's just one of the sort of little tactics that people are already coming up with all the different jungle creeps and all the different jungle camps that you can now do a bunch of different things with depending on where you smite, what items you build, and, you know, all that sort of stuff. Speaking of items, there are, of course, many, many new items that Riot has introduced to the game, and a bunch of different old ones. The first of which I'm going to talk about is the Elixir of Iron, which I'm going to talk about because it actually is a buff to Aurelia. Aurelia, as I mentioned in my Aurelia guide, has a maximum tenacity of 64.9 or 64.5% tenacity. That's pretty huge. 64.5%. Crowd control reduction, but that's actually bumped up to 81% if you get everything that I talk about in the guide. You know, Mercury Treads, a tenacity item, get the tenacity mastery, and then have 3 champions nearby you with Aurelia's passive Ionian Fervor. If you get all that and the Elixir of Iron, then from what I hear, you can get up to 81% tenacity, 81% crowd control reduction, which is just insane. And just in general, the new Elixir of Iron is a very interesting interesting item that I didn't really see coming. You know, I didn't really, I haven't been keeping up with the preseason changes too much before they actually go live, and I really wasn't expecting Riot to introduce that, but that's a pretty creative item that I'm looking forward to using more and more in the future. Okay, I'm going to focus a little bit on this lane, because I've actually been dealing a lot more damage than Vladimir for quite a while, but I haven't been taking advantage of it. I've just been sort of farming, AFK farming, and talking to you guys about everything. Okay, he's going to use his ulti here. Maybe I can bait that out. I don't think anyone's ganking, but I should probably ward in case. Right here, if I go up and auto-attack these minions and then pretend like I have to go back to auto-attack one of these, maybe he'll feel a little bit ballsy and come up. Maybe not, maybe he's just backing right now. But getting back to the preseason changes, there's just so many new items as well, or changes to existing items. For the most part, I like all of them, but the one thing that I really disagree with is removing Negatron Cloak. Negatron Cloak, I mean, there's already so few AP reduction, or excuse me, magic resistance, that's the word I'm looking for. There's already so few magic resistance items that I don't understand Riot's decision-making in removing yet another one of them. For any of you who haven't read the notes or don't know, Riot removed magic, or they removed the, hang on, Xin Zhao's ganking me here. They removed the Null Magic Mantle, or excuse me, they removed the Negatron Cloak and replaced it with the Null Magic Mantle on all the items that previously were using Negatron Cloak to build into something. Making sure Xin Zhao leaves before we go aggressive on Vladimir again. Hang on. Get the stun. There it is. And the ignite. And oh, fuck. I missed. Well, it didn't really matter since he had a heal. I should be safe here. And once my cooldowns come up, I can go aggressive again. But anyway, back to that topic, though. I really don't understand Riot's decision-making in removing the Negatron Cloak, because there's already so few AP items. The only thing that I could think that they're maybe trying to do is they could be trying to bring back double AP. For those of you who don't, or for those of you who weren't around or don't remember, in Season 1, the main meta was actually double AP, which was a pretty... It was actually the most viable strategy at the time. In Season 1, Fnatic won the World Finals by beating Against All Authority, a French team at the time, who had Soaz and Yellowstar and a player called Kuja. They were able to win the finals by running a double AP composition where they would have a mid laner called Xuxe, who would run a bunch of AP carries in the mid lane, of course, but Xpeke was their top laner at the time, and he would run a lot of top lane AP characters like Vladimir, like Kennen, like Annie. Kennen and Annie were two very popular top lane APs that you would run at the time, and dual AP was a very viable strategy that was sort of one of the things that won Fnatic the Season 1 World Finals. So maybe Riot wants to just remove all magic resistance, so, you know, double AP is more viable, or at least the option to go double AP is more viable. If you're gonna run a Vladimir or something in the top lane, like this guy, then you should probably, yeah, dang it, probably should have flashed there instead of going aggressive on him. But anyway, you should probably take away a few AP resistance options. You know, if you can just constantly mitigate all the magic damage by having a bunch of magic resistance items, then maybe, you know, that makes double AP unviable, and maybe Riot wants to make double AP viable again by just removing Null Magic Mantle and removing all these magic resistance items. But regardless, I think it's a little bit crazy and a little bit stupid, because it just feels wrong. I already struggle finding any magic resistance items to buy if the enemy AP gets fed, and this just makes it feel like it's going to be harder. But let's go ahead and stop rambling about that, moving on to the next topic. Of course, they've changed a bunch of items that is going to be different for all your different roles, but for the most part they're all the same, except for like Guardian Angel has a different build path now. There's a few different items where some of the affected items, like the Null Magic Mantle and everything, they've changed up the build paths and all that. But for the most part, items changes aren't too, they aren't too great. They shouldn't affect you too much, up to a point where they lose you the game or anything. But the big change that I am really happy about and really excited about is the changes to map objectives. There are 3 major map objectives that have been changed: Towers, Dragon, and Baron. Starting off with Towers. Towers are a little bit of like, they didn't necessarily need to be changed, but it's sort of cool that they have been changed. The outer tower is pretty much the same, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty confident that the outer tower is, you know, the same turret that it's always been. The inner turret now grants a shield. It has a regenerating shield, and it will grant your teammates a regenerating shield if they run by it. It takes a little while for the shield to power up, so it's not instant, but it can definitely save you from damage over time stuff, which is a little bit sad if you're like a Swain player or Malzahar player or a mid laner that loves to ignite your opponents and finish them off taking kills like that. Yeah, I should probably be careful here. I'm going in 1v4. I kind of want to bait out some of their abilities here, but I'll ulti there just in case Vladimir was going to flash forward or something. Looks like my team's going to be able to clean that up, though. That was pretty good by me, you know, getting the exhaust down and getting their focus. Now we can probably either take Dragon if it's up or push this mid lane. But, yeah, okay, right there you can see Soraka had the end of that shield that you get from this inner turret, which is a pretty interesting tactic, and it definitely will probably, well, it will... I can't say definitely, but it will probably make it a little bit harder for split pushers or for people who like to poke towers because the tower has a shield of itself that it will regenerate. But here's the dragon, so a perfect segue here, talking about the new. Make sure I don't get ulted by Ziggs. The dragon also gives a very, very cool new buff that stacks. To be honest, I won't lie to you guys. I don't really understand. I haven't read the full patch notes on the new dragon buff, but it gives a stacking buff that will give your team more and more bonuses as time goes on, that depending on how many times you kill it and everything, which is very, very awesome, and it will hopefully make dragon much more of an interesting contested thing, you know, a more of a contested map objective. If you guys remember the old CLG strategy in like Season 2, especially Season 2, where they would just give up dragons for free because they thought, you know, they could just CS to get some of the gold back while the rest of the enemy team is doing dragon, and it's probably not worth it to potentially lose the game on a team fight near dragon if they can't fight well. It's just better to stay in lane and CS and what have you. That was a little bit of a frustrating tactic to watch as a fan, as a CLG fan, just watching them give up so many free map objectives. But here, you know, you definitely cannot do that anymore. That is no longer a viable strategy. Never really was a viable strategy, but it certainly isn't a viable strategy anymore. Now the dragon will give you a stacking buff, and it will hopefully make dragon a much more contested thing that will just in general give more play to the map, if you sort of know what I'm talking about. You probably will once I start talking about Baron. Baron's going to spawn in 3 minutes or in 2.5 minutes. At the 20-minute mark is where I'm pretty sure he spawned at 15 minutes right before the change. Excuse me. Let me take a sip of water here to make sure that my voice doesn't dry out. Okay, there we go. But anyway, getting back on topic, Baron is the second, or rather the third, big map objective that has changed, and it's changed in a very, very cool way. It will still give you... hang on a second. We might be able to kill one of these guys here if I get a stun on him. But Xin Zhao is off in the wings, waiting to come in on us, probably. That sucks. Anyway, though, as I was saying, Baron, okay, so for any of you who don't know, Baron first got a giant change in terms of, like, how you fight him. He's a much stronger, he's a much stronger boss monster, but I feel like he's still kind of easy to deal with if you have your full team there. It doesn't feel like there's that big of a difference if you have your full team there. You're still probably going to die if you have a bad decision to go to Baron while you're all low, but you'll still probably be able to kill him if it's all 5 of you and you have a strong tank and a decently fed AD carry and everything. But in general, the interesting thing about Baron, he still gives you the bonus attack damage and ability power, but instead of giving mana regen and health regen, he'll now give you a buff to your minions, where if you're nearby your minions will gain movement speed, attack speed. I think they gain attack damage. I don't know if the... Like, I'm pretty sure that, like, they all just get increased stats across the board, which is really, really cool. The reason that's really cool is because it's just, in general, a much more... It feels like Baron is much more of a... how should I say it? It feels like Baron is much more of a real map objective that's contested for a reason that will... It feels like Baron is no longer just something that you go out to team fight, to like force a team fight, you know. In the past, it feels like Baron has just always been, okay, you know, we're having trouble pushing a lane, so let's go to Baron to try and force a team fight. If we can't force a team fight at Baron, then that means we'll be able to kill Baron, and then maybe force a team fight because we'll have more ability power and attack damage. Instead, it feels like Baron is much more of a map objective that you take to move the game onwards. For instance, like in the late game now, if you're having trouble pushing lanes and you're having trouble forcing team fights, you can say, okay, let's go do Baron, not because that can be a way to force a team fight, but just because that's a new map objective that will help us push lanes, that will help us maybe, you know, get a tower or end the game. You know, you no longer just have to take an inhibitor to make a lane easier to push. Now there's a lot more you can do. Make sure I don't get caught out here by Kalista. Oh my goodness, our Lucian is fed. I didn't even realize. I haven't been paying that much attention to the game, I won't lie to you guys. But, oh my goodness. How many kills does Lucian have? 7 and 1. I'm getting carried this game, boys. But, anyway. Back on topic as we catch out Ziggs here. As I miss my thingy and then get caught by Soraka. As I was saying, the really cool thing about Baron, though, is just the fact that it feels much more like a map objective that can move the game along. And that's going to lead into my next point, which is talking about the meta. And the meta has changed. Old school players may think, you know, if you think back to Season 1 and Season 2, the meta only really shifted when lanes shifted. Before Season 1, NA used to run a roaming support with like a tanky character in the bottom lane and running their AD carry in the mid lane and an AP carry like Kennen or Annie in the top lane. That eventually changed into like the AD carry and support. That changed, you know, here and there into a bunch of different strategies where it was very clear where the meta shifted because there were just so many different things that were very clear and obvious to the eye, you know. If suddenly an AD carry and support is in the bottom lane instead of just one tanky character with a roaming support, that's a very clear shift that's clear to the eye. But the meta no longer changes like that. We have pretty much set lanes for the rest of eternity, you know, unless you're running a Vayne top lane or a Quinn top lane or something. There's still variation in lanes that you can run, you know, whether you want to run in an AP mid lane or an assassin or what have you. But for the most part, the meta is still pretty locked in terms of our lanes, but it's still changing drastically. And this gigantic patch in patch 420, this huge preseason patch, is changing the meta in a very positive way. The game, just in general, I've been playing the game really well, which might be why I like it so much, but I feel like the meta is just changing in such a positive way because of the fact that it's no longer about team fighting so greatly. If you guys remember, here's another throwback. I've been talking a lot about history of League of Legends. Here's another little bit of historical knowledge. You guys may remember a game that came out a little after League of Legends came out called Bloodline Champions. What Bloodline Champions was, it was like an arena sort of League of Legends style game where you had more than 4 abilities. I think you had 5 or 6 or maybe 8 abilities, where it was like sort of in the third-person League of Legends style. What happened? 2 for 2? Was that just us fighting at their red buff? Okay. Making sure that I focus enough on the game to still win it. But the thing about Bloodline Champions was, it was just all about the team fighting. There was no laning phase. There was no, you know, nothing you had to worry about. No builds, I don't think, if I remember correctly. All it was team fighting. You know, you would just be in an arena, and then you would fight your opponents until you killed each other. To be honest, League of Legends for a while has sort of felt like that, where everything has been focused around team fighting. You know, laning phase is pretty important. Laning phase is very important, and there's a lot of strategy that goes into laning phase, especially if you get to the LCS and you start doing stuff like lane swaps. If you try to counterpick lanes, if you coordinate for like dragons and all sorts of stuff like that very well. There's a lot of different stuff that you can do. This way, Nautilus, I'm coming, if you can live long enough. Ah, shoot, you can't. But anyway, the thing about Bloodline Champions was it was all team fighting, and League of Legends has actually felt that way for a little while, just because of the fact that team fighting has been the #1 thing ever since you hit mid-game. It felt like map objectives were just there for you to team fight. It felt like, you know, Baron was just there to force a team fight or to give you more power in team fighting. It felt like towers were just areas where you can push a lane to a point where, you know, you'll either win the game or be able to force another team fight if the enemy team shows up. Everything seemed so focused on team fighting, but with the new Baron changes, with the new item changes, with the new jungle changes, dragon changes, tower changes, everything seems much more focused on the map more than anything else. The map seems like the most, you know, the largest objective, if I can get the words out of my mouth. It feels like an objective that you need to abuse and that you need to control. If you guys, you know, if you guys watched my Sun Tzu Art of War series, Art of League that I did, you guys probably heard plenty of, if you watched the entire series, you probably heard plenty of different discussion topics about the... Ooh, I didn't realize she was that weak. Probably should have gone a little more aggressive there. You guys probably... Wow, that's Zig's flash. Okay, you guys probably remember all the different topics I talked about, talking about stuff like the different strategies you can use as a general, the different strategies you can use to, you know, abuse the terrain that you're on. I think I did a whole episode on terrain and strategy based around terrain. That's what League of Legends feels like now, and that's what's so beautiful about this preseason patch. You're no longer just focused on fighting your opponents, you're focused on maneuvering around the map, controlling objectives, and using your objectives to a very cool advantage. The Baron is suddenly this new objective that it's no longer just about forcing team fights, either baiting out a team fight at Baron or by using Baron to win more team fights. It's now about pushing lanes, it's about splitting your team, about controlling the map. Here's another objective that I haven't even talked about yet, the new Scuttlebug. That's another really cool objective that it's like an incredibly small objective that probably won't ever really be contested, but it's another cool thing that just gives more play to the map. The map just has so much more interactivity to it that will affect the game more so than just affecting team fights. It will actually affect the game and how one team either comes out on top or not. Typically, I've actually found this very easy to get used to as well. Just taking you guys through the typical process of the thought process, rather, of a game. You guys can see the Baron buff affecting these minions now. The gigantic purple everything that they get. But anyway, just going through a typical thought process of any typical League of Legends game now. It used to be just all about winning laning phase, taking the laning phase victory into team fighting, using map objectives like Dragon and Baron to force team fights, and eventually getting so strong that you can overwhelm your opponent to a point where you dive and have a team fight under tower, killing off your opponents, and then taking, you know, inhibs and the Nexus and everything. Now, though, it feels like the towers and minions and jungle and everything, with all the changes, the towers specifically have been buffed to a point where it's like, you can't just tower dive anymore, unless you have a very distinct advantage. So you still try to, the laning phase is still fairly normal, but after laning phase, you suddenly have a bit of a dilemma where you're suddenly focused on map objectives, on team fighting. When you move into the mid game and late game, you're suddenly thinking about going and taking Baron rather than just using Baron as a way to, another way to team fight. You want to take Baron because that will help you push the lanes. If I finish off Vladimir there. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself a little bit here. You know, as I said at the start of the video, I'm not used to doing full gameplay commentaries, but this is a really, really exciting thing, and it's bringing League of Legends into really exciting territory. It's just League of Legends in general has felt almost like it's just another Bloodline Champions in the past, kind of. You know, that's obviously not true, but it has felt just so focused on team fighting that the map and the towers and the minions don't feel like they play that much of a part of it until the very end of the game where you're winning the game and your minions here are helping you take down the Nexus. Now it feels so much more focused on map objectives, on abusing the map, and doing all sorts of cool things that I'm very excited to see how it turns out and how Riot takes the game further in the upcoming season. Thank you all very much for taking the time out of your day to watch my video. Thank you if you actually made it to the end of this video. I don't know if anyone's going to like this full gameplay commentary. I don't know if you guys are going to like my ramblings on, but I hope you guys did. If you enjoyed it, please make sure you tell me in the comments, leave a like and everything. But anyway, until next time, thank you all very much for watching. Good luck in solo queue, and have a wonderful day.